Have you ever felt like no matter how much you think, plan, or pray, you always end up in the same place? Like walking in circles in a maze that secretly has no exit. Have you ever wondered why the same kinds of emotions, the same arguments, the same failures keep replaying in your life, even though you keep telling yourself that next time you will definitely change? Welcome back to the channel, my friend. I am really glad you are here, because today we are going to talk about a teaching that goes right to the heart of why so many people feel stuck for years, and why genuine spiritual practice is not about escaping your life, but about breaking the invisible limits inside yourself. This full episode is inspired by countless repeated reminder that real practice is breaking through self-limitation, not the dramatic outer limitations you complain about, but the quiet, unseen limits inside your own heart. Was limits sitting your thoughts, your reactions, your self-image. You're like transparent walls. You bump into them over and over, but because you cannot see them, you think fate, karma, or other people are blocking you. F. Poe puts it very sharply. He says, your prison is not your destiny. It is your willingness or unwillingness to step beyond your own habits. The cage is not handed to you by other people. The cage is built by your own repeated choices. Your own fear of stepping out of the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. So in this video, we are going to walk slowly through that cage. We will talk about emotional limits, belief limits, habit limits, and especially the limit of your self-image. That invisible story called "This Is Just Who I Am." You will retell and expand the stories from the original article, turning them into living scenes that you can recognize in yourself. And we will keep coming back to a simple but powerful question. Is it really that you cannot change, or is it that some part of you does not want to walk beyond its old edge? Let us begin with the feeling of being stuck, because you probably know that feeling very well. Maybe your stuckness shows up in your temper. You swear you will not explode next time. Yet one small trigger and your anger bursts out exactly as before. Afterward, you hate yourself. You apologize. You promise again. At the next time, it repeats. Maybe your stuckness shows up in relationships. You keep entering similar connections, meeting similar partners, playing similar roles, ending with similar heartbreak. You change the names and faces, but the pattern does not change. Maybe your stuckness shows up in work. You long to grow, to take a step forward, to leave a job that suffocates you. But when opportunities appear, you suddenly become heavy, tired, hesitant. You find reasons to delay. Months turn into years. And after enough repeats, a heavy sentence appears in your mind. Maybe this is just my destiny. Maybe I really cannot change. Poe's teaching breaks that sentence in half. He says, the problem is not that you are too weak. The problem is that you are too used to playing the weak version of yourself. You are not chained by fate. You are chained by the story you keep telling about who you are and how you must react. To see this more clearly, let us walk into one of the stories from the article and expand it. Here was a man with a fierce temper. He loved his family, but his anger was like a sudden storm. One small thing could ignite it. Dish not washed, a child being noisy, a partner questioning him, and he would shout, slam doors, say things that cut like knives. Every time. Afterward, he felt deep regret. He saw the fear in his children's eyes, the sadness on his partner's face. He tried many times to change. He promised himself, from tomorrow I will control myself. He read books about communication. He practiced breathing exercises. For a short while, it seemed to work, but then life brought pressure. Someone said the wrong sentence, and suddenly he was back at the volcano. Finally, unable to bear the cycle, he went to hear Poe teach. After the talk, he approached and asked, with a tired voice, why am I still the same after so much effort? I do still explode. Is it my karma? Is it just who I am? Poe looked at him quietly and asked only one question. Are you truly willing to break yourself? The man was confused. He said, of course I am willing. Oh, else would I come here? But as he walked home, the question echoed inside him. Am I truly willing to break myself? Is later, during a small argument at home, he felt the familiar surge of anger rising. His body tightened. His voice started to lift. In that moment, a faint awareness appeared. He saw that a part of him actually enjoyed the rush of power and anger. He saw that in his heart he still believed, I am right. They are wrong. They should change so I do not have to feel this. He realized something shocking. He did not actually want to change his temper at the root. He wanted the world to stop provoking it. He wanted his family to behave in a way that never touched his raw spots. In other words, he wanted to keep his cage exactly as it was, soft and comfortable on the inside, while demanding that the outside world never shake it. At recognition pierced him. For the first time, he saw the invisible contract he had made with life. I will practice the little. As long as you, life, promise not to touch my stubborn spots. That is not practice. That is a tray. You was not trying to wake up. You was trying to buy comfort with a little bit of spiritual effort. This is what self-limitation looks like. On the surface, you seem to be working very hard. Inside, you are secretly protecting the very patterns that keep you stuck. You want relief without revolution. You want peace without looking at your own responsibility. You'll practice, kitten poses, is a self-revolution. It starts exactly at the place where you say most strongly, I just cannot change this. I am just like this. AB for you it is not anchor. AB it is your tendency to retreat into silence whenever conflict appears. You tell yourself, I am just a quiet person. I do not like drama. But if you look closer, you might see that you are not protecting peace. You are protecting your fear of being criticized or misunderstood. Where silence looks gentle, but inside it is a shield. That shield is your self-limitation. Or maybe your pattern is always needing to be the victim. You hold on to old hearts for years. You repeat old stories endlessly in your mind. You tell yourself, they were wrong. I was right. They owe me. That story becomes a fixed identity. It keeps you from looking at the ways you also contribute to pain. It keeps you from moving on. Letting go would mean losing the special role of the one who was hurt. Some part of you refuses to give that up. That refusal is a self-limitation. The article puts it in a very clear way. Every time you say, I am just this kind of person, you are building a wall in your heart. That sentence feels like self-knowledge, but often it is just self-defense. Ethimpo says, the place you insist you cannot change is exactly the doorway of real practice. The harder you hold that door shut, the more stuck you will feel. The moment you even slightly loosen your grip, something new can enter. Let us talk about 3 big categories of invisible limits that keep you stuck: emotional limits, belief limits, and habit limits. Emotional limits are the ways you think you must react when certain feelings appear. For example, you may believe, when I feel misunderstood, I must get angry. When I feel stressed, I must escape. When I feel afraid, I must shut down. You think the emotion is forcing you, but often it is your attachment to one familiar reaction. You have rehearsed that reaction so many times that any other response feels impossible. That is why Ethimpo says, the problem is not that you have emotions. The problem is that you only know one way to life with them. Belief limits are the fixed ideas about how life must be. Things must be this way. People must treat me like that. A partner must understand me. A boss must appreciate me. Efforts must be rewarded. If reality does not match these beliefs, you feel crushed. Of course, there is nothing wrong with having preferences or values. The suffering comes when your beliefs become rigid. When you cannot accept that life is larger, messier, and more unpredictable than your mental script. The more tightly you cling, the more often life will feel like a personal attack. Habit limits are the invisible loops you repeat for years. Fighting uncomfortable conversations, using your phone whenever you feel anxious, comparing yourself with others whenever you feel unsure. These habits feel like they are just happening, but they are actually choices that have become automatic. The article uses a very strong image. These habits are like invisible ropes binding you to the same spot. The more you refuse to look at them, the tighter they become. The more you insist that fate is doing this to you, the less you see your own hand on the rope. Here is the really challenging part. Breaking these limits is not mostly about doing something huge on the outside. It is about doing something different on the inside in very small moments. Let me tell you about the young student from the article. He was full of dreams. He wanted to grow, to contribute, to become someone useful, but he was convinced he lacked courage. You would say, I know I have many limitations, but I just cannot cross them. Each time a challenge came up, he would prepare, feeling the old fear rise, and then step back into the comfort of familiar routines. He came to Kisanpo and said, please help me become brave. Kisanpo listened and then said something very gentle but sharp. It is not that you cannot cross. It is that your heart does not want to walk beyond its own limit. On the surface that sounds almost cruel. But when the student took those words home and really thought about them, he suddenly saw what they pointed to. He realized that the thing he feared was not the challenge itself. He was not really afraid of the work, the difficulty, or the risk. He was afraid of becoming a different person. If he crossed that line, he would have to let go of his old identity as the one who wants to grow but cannot. You would have to take on new responsibilities. People might start expecting more from him. You would lose the excuse of hiding behind his fear. Your freedom would mean real responsibility. That is what terrified him. Soul is I cannot, was actually I do not want to pay the price of becoming who I could be. That recognition was the first real step of his courage. As Kisanpo says, the breakthrough does not start when you jump into the unknown. It starts the moment you see clearly what you are actually afraid of. There is another story in the article about a very sensitive woman. She was kind and intelligent, but a single offhand comment from someone could torture her for days. Someone might casually say, you look tired lately, and her mind would spiral. Did they mean ugly? Did they think I'm failing? Maybe they do not like me anymore. She knew it was too much. She would tell herself, it is not worth it. I should not care. But she could not stop. One day, she met Kisanpo and shared her struggle. He asked her very directly, why do you take one sentence from someone else and turn it into a reason to hurt yourself? She answered, because I'm afraid that people will not like me. And he replied, then the thing that traps you is not what they say. It is what you think about yourself. That day, she finally understood what breaking self-limitation means. She had believed that the problem was always outside. People should speak more carefully. People should be kinder. People should reassure her. She never noticed that the real source of her suffering was her own belief that her worth depends entirely on other people's approval. To break her stuck pattern, she did not need to control other people's mouths. She needed to slowly reclaim her own value from their hands. She needed to see that her heart was too quick to hand the power of joy and pain to others. The limit was inside. These stories show a pattern. In each case, the person thinks the barrier is outside. The angry mind thinks the problem is a provoking world. The sensitive woman thinks the problem is careless people. The fearful student thinks the problem is huge challenges. The shy friend in the article thinks the problem is a cold society that does not understand him. And every time, the teaching brings them back to this point. Your strongest limit is not the situation. It is the way you cling to one way of being in that situation. One friend in the article, for example, was terrified of rejection. In relationships, he never expressed his needs clearly. He waited for others to decide everything. He always tried to be agreeable, hoping that as long as he did not ask for much, people would not leave him. The result was exactly the opposite. The more he suppressed his needs, the more invisible he felt. The more invisible he felt, the more resentful he became. The more resentful he became, the more lonely he felt. He thought he had a relationship problem. He hoped practice would somehow fix his loneliness. And he heard Kisanpo say, you have spent your whole life waiting for others to understand you, but you have never broken your own limit in order to understand them. In that moment, he saw himself from another angle. He realized he had never truly stepped out of his fear to see that others also felt uncertain, also needed to be seen, also carried their own pain. He had been insisting that the world come to his side of the river, while never being willing to cross the bridge to meet others. His limit was not rejection itself. It was the fear of being seen in his vulnerability. Real practice is not making the world finally read your mind. Real practice is stretching your heart beyond its usual reactions, even when it trembles. All of this may sound inspiring, but you might be thinking, how do I actually break these limits in daily life? I need to make some extreme move, quit my job tomorrow, end a relationship overnight, start a radical new project. Sometimes big changes are necessary. Kitten Po emphasizes that the deepest breakthroughs happen in the smallest moments. Breaking self-limitation is not about violently forcing yourself. It is about gently but firmly choosing a different response right in the middle of your old pattern. Imagine a typical trigger for you. Maybe someone criticizes you. Normally, your emotional limit says, when criticized, I must either attack or collapse. This time, you feel the familiar heat and tightening, but instead of instantly firing back or shutting down, you pause for 3 breaths. You notice your body, your thoughts. You ask yourself, what exactly hurts here? Is there any truth in what they say? How can I respond without betraying myself, but also without attacking? You may still feel defensive. You may still be clumsy, but in that tiny pause, you have already stepped beyond your old script. That is a breakthrough. Maybe your pattern is to use silence to avoid conflict. Normally, when tension rises, you freeze and then disappear into your phone or your room. This time, you still feel afraid, but you say one simple sentence. I am scared to talk about this, but I do not want to just run away again. And we try. Your voice might shake. You might not say it elegantly, but that one sentence is you stepping beyond your limit. Maybe your habit is to scroll on your phone whenever you feel lonely or anxious. Normally, you do it automatically. This time, you catch yourself reaching for the screen. You stop, even for 1 minute, and say, I am feeling lonely right now. That is okay. We'll breathe with this feeling for 60 seconds before I distract myself. At 60 seconds is a tiny revolution. You are teaching your heart that it can stay present with discomfort without immediately escaping. Over time, this builds inner strength, the kind of strength that spiritual traditions call true courage or inner power. Breaking limits is not only about doing things you are afraid to do. It is also about not doing the things you always do without thinking, not reacting, not numbing, not attacking, not defending in the vulgar way. The article has a beautiful line that echoes this. The clearest sign of practice is not that your life becomes smooth, but that when life is not smooth, you are no longer trapped in exactly the same reactions as before. From the point of view of karma and destiny, every time you choose the same reaction, you repeat the same karma, you walk the same circle, you meet the same kind of future. Every time you choose even a slightly different response, you bend the line, open a new path. If your habit is always anger, choosing patience one time is a seed of a new destiny. If your habit is always escape, choosing to stay present one time is a seed of a new destiny. If your habit is always blaming, choosing to look inside one time is a seed of a new destiny. These seeds may look small, but they carry a powerful future. Spiritual practice is not a magic that deletes your past. It is a wise way of planting new causes. Here is another crucial piece in Kempo's teaching. Breaking limits does not mean becoming hard and unfeeling. It means becoming softer and more real. Many people misunderstand breakthrough. They think it means forcing themselves, fighting themselves, crushing their fear. They think they must become strong, tough, ever vulnerable, ever hard. But Kempo says, the softer your heart, the greater your strength. A hard heart shatters under pressure. A soft heart bends, adapts, absorbs, and heals. A hard heart puts you against the world. A soft heart lets you move with the world. Real breakthrough is not whipping yourself past your fear. It is seeing clearly where the fear comes from, holding that younger part of you with compassion, and then walking forward with awareness. You bring your fear along, but you do not let it drive the car. You might still say, I am scared, and I will still take this step, and sensitive, and I will still stay present, am wounded, and I will still choose not to hurt others in the same way. This blend of clarity and kindness is the real fruit of practice. It is what traditions call wisdom and compassion walking together. Wisdom sees the pattern. Compassion embraces the one trapped in the pattern. Together, they create freedom. From this point of view, the question, why am I always stuck, turns into a much more useful question. Where in my heart am I refusing to step beyond my old identity? Maybe it is your identity is always busy and needed, so you never rest. Maybe it is your identity is the one who is always hurt, so you never admit your own mistakes. Maybe it is your identity is the strong one who never cries, so you never ask for help. Maybe it is your identity is the spiritual one, so you never allow yourself to show confusion or weakness. Whatever it is, Compass teaching invites you to see that identity not as your true self, but as a costume you have worn for years. It protected you once. It may be choking you. Practice is slowly loosening the costume until you can move more naturally again. We can bring all of this into one more simple picture. Imagine your heart is a room. For many years, you only walked in a small circle in the middle of that room. You thought that circle was your whole life. Your reactions, your labels, your fears, your excuses, they are all part of that small circle. Practice is not about painting beautiful images on the walls of that tiny circle. It is about realizing there are doors here, there are windows, there are corners you have never touched. Breaking self-limitation means you put one foot slightly outside that old spiral and discover the floor still holds you. The sky does not fall. Your heart can survive, and not only survive, it can become more awake, more spacious, more compassionate. So as we come toward the end of this long exploration, I want to talk directly to you, the person listening right now. Think about one place in your life where you feel endlessly stuck. It might be a specific relationship, a recurring emotion, a habit you hate, a fear you keep obeying. Ask yourself quietly, if I am honest, what am I protecting here? Am I protecting my pride? Am I protecting my fear of being seen? Am I protecting my comfort zone? Am I protecting a familiar story about myself, even if that story hurts me? And ask, what would one tiny step beyond this protection look like today, out in some perfect future? Maybe it is making one phone call you have avoided. Maybe it is saying one honest sentence in a conversation where you usually hide. Maybe it is pausing for breath once instead of snapping back. Maybe it is forgiving yourself once instead of attacking yourself. That one step is not the end of your practice. It is the entrance, and the entrance is always in the place you have refused to go. As Poe says, every place you are willing to break through, your heart becomes freer. Every place you are willing to let go, your inner space becomes larger. Every place you are willing to see clearly, your future becomes cleaner. You do not have to become perfect today. You do not have to dismantle all your limits at once. Today your heart can open even a little more than yesterday. If your awareness can shine a little more than yesterday, your practice is alive. Real spiritual work is not a dramatic performance. It is a gentle awakening. It lets you see your blind spots and embrace your wounds. It lets you face the imperfection of life and accept the imperfect you. It loosens the grip of old patterns and gives you the courage to write a new destiny. You always had more choices than you believed. Where suffering is not your fault alone, but neither is it inchangeable fate. Between your past karma and your future destiny lies this living present moment, where you can either repeat yourself or step outside your invisible shell. So, my friend, next time you feel yourself stuck in the same old place, do not rush to blame the world, karma, or destiny. Instead, pause, breathe, and ask, what invisible version of myself am I still clinging to right now? And what small, honest step could I take beyond it? If this video script touched something real in you, I invite you to keep this question alive in your daily life. Watch yourself with curiosity instead of judgment. Notice where your heart tightens, where your mind insists, I cannot, where your habits brag you back. Every time you see it clearly, you are already breaking the spell a little. Would love to hear from you. If you feel comfortable, share in the comments one limit you most want to break right now. It might be an emotion, a pattern, a belief, or a relationship you know you have outgrown but still cling to. Writing it down is not just for others. It is also a way of giving your own heart a new direction. If this long sharing gave you even a little clarity or courage, please support the channel so we can keep creating deep, honest content like this. You can subscribe so you do not miss future episodes. Press like so the platform knows that conversations about awakening, wisdom, karma, compassion, practice, and destiny matter. And leave a comment so we can grow together as a community. If you feel called to support more strongly, you can also consider joining as a member, which helps us continue making long, thoughtful videos that you can use as companions on your path. Thank you for walking through this exploration with me. You see your invisible limits more and more clearly. You find the courage to step beyond the old version of yourself. Every small breakthrough brings you closer to a life of genuine freedom, awareness, and peace.
At the end of the day, we all need something that brings us back to ourselves. Something that reminds us to slow down, breathe, and stay centered. Simple bracelet can do exactly that. Every bead you touch brings your mind back to calm, back to clarity, back to the present moment. If one of the bracelets you just saw resonates with you, you can find the purchase link in the video description and explore more beautiful styles in our channel store. Let the one meant for you find its way to your wrist.